What if saying no could actually build your business? Today in the Accidental CEO podcast, I'm talking with the powerhouse Chelene Knight, founder of Breathing Space Creative Studios, and your new favorite reminder that energy is currency. If you're feeling burnout, stretched thin, or stuck in a do it all loop, this episode is your wake up call. Chelene shares her wild leap from a draining 9 to 5 into a full time entrepreneurship with zero savings and a tween in tow. She didn't have a plan, but she did have a purpose and 12 paying clients who helped spark a whole damn movement. Now she teaches creatives how to stop people pleasing, protect their time, and say no without burning bridges. If you ever felt guilty turning down work or doubted whether your dream business is even possible, this one is for you. Get ready to rethink your boundaries, your energy, and your entire creative rhythm. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, and today I have Chelene Knight with me. She is the founder and coach of Breathing Space Creative Studios, where she teaches how to say no with love because energy is currency. And that is absolutely something that we all need to learn more of and make sure that we, are conserving our energy and, understanding how to say no to things that are not directing us towards our goals. So I'm so excited that she's here to share all of that with us. Welcome, Chelene.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So tell everybody a little bit of what you do now, and then let's backtrack into how did you end up owning your own business now? Let's hear your accidental CEO story.
Yeah, sounds good. And so the work that I do is interesting because it's evolved over the last 6 years. And so I had a day job, a pretty decently paying day job, but there was something not only about the work, but about the environment that didn't sit well with me. And I think over time this really started to get heavy. So I'll just jump forward and tell you a little bit more about what I do now, which is coaching. And so I work one-on-one with all kinds of creatives. I tend to call in a lot of writers because I myself am a published author, but I also work with interior designers. I work with therapists. I work with web designers, like all kinds of creative people to get them to slow down and do a lot of this self discovery work to kind of find out, what is it about them that makes them who they are. And when we have this data, we can look at that and kind of like build out almost a map for, curating their own energy, building out like a decision making process for things. And again, just this whole idea of recognizing how valuable your energy is. So that's why I say energy is currency, because again, you have to be very careful how you spend it. So I do a lot of very deep self discovery work with folks in hopes that that kind of gets to the root of what's causing them to, be inside of burnout or to do more than they feel they can do. So it's very difficult and extensive work, but it is so powerful in that now I'm able to see folks on the other side of it and just really transforming how they show up for their businesses, how they show up for their family, how they show up for their creative practices. But I started out in this business doing consulting, which I didn't really enjoy. I'm like, I don't really want to give people advice. I want to help them figure out what's going to work for them. And that just really, required me to go deep.
Yeah, that's what I love about coaching, especially one-on-one, is the ability to really spend the time trying to figure it out what is getting people stuck, right? Because most of the time we're on our own way and we don't even realize it. We're the ones kind of keeping things from moving forward. So it's a good time spent to really trying to figure it out and dive deep into all those limiting beliefs that we have. Do you feel like in the, because I see this a lot, so I'm curious to see if you see it too. Do you feel like the creative arena, people are very likely to overwork themselves and getting to burnout fairly quickly in the beginning of their career even?
Yes. And I tried to figure out why this is. And I honestly think it's because we as creatives don't always value the work that we're doing. So we end up taking on things for free or we kind of lowball ourselves and we say, "Oh yeah, just pay whatever you can." But I try to picture someone in a different role acting in that way, like, a doctor saying, "Ah, that's fine. Hey, you don't have to pay this medical bill. It's all good." But we tend to do that as creatives because we ourselves have not figured out how to place the value on that work. And so it's so easy for us to just do things for free. And that's really where a lot of burnout started to come into play for me specifically because I had zero boundaries. I'm like, let me just do everything and anything. And I also didn't understand all the unique, intricate qualities that I had and how I could really capitalize on some of those things. So again, I think it's part that we don't value ourselves and our work, and also that we don't understand ourselves at the level necessary to be able to properly be compensated for the work that we're doing as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's a combination of that escaping that starving artist mentality that we hear, that art doesn't pay a lot, that, anything in the creative world is not a career. I think there's also a combination of attaching your personal worth to your work a little bit too much and not understanding how to separate that and thinking business, this is my product, this is my work, and this is not me. So we ended up overworking because we're so connected to the work that we're putting out that we feel like it's, connected to our self-worth and our self-value. So that's what I see out there with our people.
Yes.
Take us through that journey of, you were at this job, things were not connecting. How did you make that jump? What was the moment that really made you decided, I'm going to leave this job and take the next step, whatever that is? Did you even know what that was?
No. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. And looking back, I don't know. I think, there's some things I would have done differently. And I don't recommend that folks do what I did, but I'm always very open in sharing my story. So I was working in this job and it paid decently. There wasn't too much responsibility. It was, pretty relaxed. But as an employee, I felt incredibly undervalued, to the point where if I didn't show up to this job, I'm pretty sure nobody would really notice. Like it was just so strange. And I think, some people might think, oh, this is, great. You can kind of fly under the radar and just get paid. That never sat well with my personality and this desire that I have to like curate and build and like, really feel like a valuable part of the team. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to leave this job. I am going to create a writing course and I am going to hope that people purchase this course. And again, I would not recommend this. I had very little savings at the time and I was a single parent of a young tween at the time. Like, don't do this, people. Don't do this. But I did it and it worked out really well. And again, I think part of that was because of the community that I already had in my corner. And so I built out this kind of, I want to say like rough and raw writing course. There were like typos and broken links, all kinds of things. But, I think people trusted me and they said, oh my gosh, look what Chelene put out. Like, let's purchase this. And the course, I think, was between $300 and $400, and like 12 people signed up. And I was like, what? How in the world did this happen? And I think it was in that moment that I realized, okay, if I put this thing out there and people are interested in it, what would it look like if I really took my time and built something intentional and pushed that out into the world? So I think those 12 people, oh gosh, and they probably don't even know this. Like if they didn't sign up for that course, I don't think Breathing Space Creative would be here today and I would be doing this work for myself. So I think that really boosted my confidence in a way that I needed, and it happened right at the perfect time. But again, I'd spent so much of my creative time building community and really calling in the right people around me to the point where when I needed people, they were there and they showed up. So, like that breaking point at work, I don't think it was something I can pinpoint, but it felt for me like I just knew there was something bigger. And if I didn't do it in that moment, when would I do it? So the timing probably wasn't right, but is there ever really a right time to make a leap like that? Probably not.
Probably not. No, I think I understand and appreciate you being careful at advising people to take such a jump when there's nothing planned, but at the same time, staying in a place that's, not aligning with your values and kind of making you miserable, it's not gonna help you be there for your family. It's not gonna help you be there for new opportunities. So at the end of the day, even if you have to find some different job to kind of be a safety net while you work on what you're doing on the side, I feel like staying in a place like that also doesn't help anybody at the end of the day, right?
And you have to know yourself too. I think, like, I know myself quite a bit in that I feel like I'm a natural born risk taker. And so it's like, oh, let me try this. I'll always figure it out. And I think that's a good quality to have as an entrepreneur, because there are going to be weeks where you feel like, oh no, I'm not making enough money. Should I go and apply at the coffee shop down the street? No, of course not. It's just you have to always be, I think it's part mindset. So one thing that I actually have, which has been so helpful for me, is I've built out this spreadsheet of potential money-making opportunities. And they're just very simple things like, oh, offer a half price coaching call, or do, sell something from my Google Drive as extra content, or whatever it is. It's a whole list of things. And when I start to feel that tug at the back of my brain that maybe I shouldn't be running this business and I should go just get a real job, I go to that list and I just look at it. I'm like, there's so many possibilities. There's so many cool things I could do to bring in cash in the interim. And then that kind of quiets down that inner critic. And then I can go about my day. So it's more of a mindset thing. I don't think I've ever actually sold anything from that spreadsheet. It's mostly just for my brain and to kind of calm me down in those stressful moments. Well, there's a hot tip in case
Yeah, that's
you
a
want
great
one.
strategy, kinda having your backup plans, right? Like, if things go south, here are some things I can do for some extra cash in the meantime, instead of quitting my dream and going to work on a coffee shop, so I love that.
Mhm.
How does seeing your course kinda taking off quickly, how did that success impact your decision to commit that, like, fully to a full-time path?
Yeah, I think it just allowed me to see what was possible. And I'll be honest in saying that initial course that I launched, I don't think I was super proud of it. It felt rushed and it felt like just something I had to put out there, but it was still all of me. I was taking, a lot of my expertise and experiences and putting that into something that I could sell. And so for me, it was more about the people who trusted that, because I knew I could do better and I could build something bolder and I could take my time with it. But what that actually showed me is that I need to look at myself a little bit deeper. I need to, bring out the magnifying glass and really look at myself. What are the things that I think I need to work on as an entrepreneur in order to build out that course or that program in a way that feels aligned with my expertise? And so I started to really look at some things that, I was not doing or not capable of doing at the time. So one of those things was communication, in that I felt like, oh, I can't include any live sessions in my course. Oh, I can't include any video because I don't want to talk. Like, I don't want to, I just want people to have the content. And I'm like, I need to work on that, because these are some of the things that I think will really create this robust program. And so I started to work on my communication. And then that led me to having almost like a speaking career on the side, which was connected to the business. And I'm like, oh. So then I got curious and I'm like, what else can I work on as it relates to myself as just a human being? And so looking at mindfulness, looking at, and the mindfulness was great because that taught me how to slow down, how to be in the moment, how to embody, certain things when I'm in a call with a client. And again, it just transformed things. Confidence starts to increase even more. And I think that just shows me, okay, if you can work on all of these things, what else can you work on? And how is that going to positively kind of stream out into, the coaching conversations that I'm having with other people, right? Like, how can they also do something similar? Because I happen to be working with creative entrepreneurs who face some of the same struggles that I did in the beginning. So I think this desire to continually grow as a person is what I think kept me going because I'm definitely an accidental CEO. I had no idea that I was going to do this for so long. But what's wild is I've been able to support myself and I haven't had to go back to a regular job. And that is just still surprises me every day when I think about it.
I think what you mentioned, it reminds me a lot of building confidence, like those little wins, the little things that you do and you're like, "Oh, I can do this. That this feels good. What else can I do?" Like so slowly doing things to help build that confidence is amazing how many opportunities start to present themselves when you just start looking outside of what you're doing. Take the time to lift your head up from the computer, the paper, whatever it is that you are using to produce your work and really start looking at how else can I show up? How can I share my skills and help other people? And it just doors just go on opening and opening.
That's spot on. That's spot on. And also because you're willing to receive that. Like when an opportunity comes in, it's a lot easier for me to figure out if that aligns with what I want to focus on right now in this season and what I'm prioritizing, because that is such valuable information. Like we don't have to say yes to everything, but how to know what to say yes and what to say no to.
You talked about having a little bit of a community once you took that leap and had your course. Were you working on something on the side at the same time that you had your job and then kind of built that kind of became your safety net without you even knowing about it?
Yeah, I was working for a local literary magazine. And it was mostly just, really small honorarium. It wasn't like fully compensated in any way. That's really where the community was. And so I had this community of writers, of readers, of creative humans. They knew the work that I was doing at the magazine. And I think that's honestly what allowed me to take that leap. So community for me has been pivotal ever since. And what I think is interesting as an entrepreneur is we don't often think about who we need around us to continue to grow. So even when I'm looking at all these areas that I know I need to develop in, and this is like lifelong work, who can I call in around me that can help with that? And I think that's helped me feel less alone because as entrepreneurs, we feel like, oh no, who are we going to talk to about like this problem that I'm having? So one of my goals now is to build out a different community. So keeping my core community, they're not going anywhere, but sometimes we need a different set of people or a different circle to offer a very specific support. So that was a huge learning to me because here's something I think maybe folks will relate to. Like I was going to, just my writing friends and being like, oh, like I'm having, trouble with this client or I'm having trouble kind of like figuring out my back end process for my client management or blah, blah, blah. And they're looking at me like, what are you even talking about? Like, what? And so I realized, oh, okay, so I'm doing something that's different. My journey is different than this person over here. I need someone who understands what it's like to navigate, some of this entrepreneurial stuff. So now I'm building out this community for that where it's just informal, but it's just people I can go to and folks who can come to me at the same time, if they're struggling with something. And that's a really good position to be in, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So you've experienced some burnout firsthand while you're juggling some business and personal responsibilities. Can you share a little bit about some specific strategies that helped you kind of recover and prevent future burnout?
I would say I'm still recovering from the burnout, and this was like 6 years ago, when I really just felt it and felt like everything was caving in, and it was so heavy, and what was a really big signal to me that something had to change was that all of the things I enjoyed doing suddenly gave me no joy. Like, I'm a writer, and if I can't write, I can't imagine, like, what am I gonna do with all this extra time? Like, creating and building, that is so valuable to me and so important, but I noticed that I just didn't feel like doing it, and I would find excuses to kind of push it away. So, for me, that was a huge sign, and so I looked at what was going on, in my life, and the biggest eye opener was that I had no boundaries. And so starting, leaving this day job, starting my business, I was taking on things that I didn't want to be doing. So I had to look at myself. Why don't I enjoy this particular kind of a project? Why don't I like to work with this kind of a person? Like what is that data telling me? And so the burnout I started to recover from it, from building on all of those things that I learned about myself, learning how to build and communicate boundaries, how to say no with love to things that I didn't want to do. And for me, again, as a creative, I think we are afraid to say no to things because we think, oh, that opportunity won't come again. If I say no, they're not coming back. And so I had to unlearn that. And part of that was realizing that I could say no right now and I could plant a seed for them to come back when the time was right. So, really thinking about what that no was rooted in. Is it just that I don't align with this organization or person, or is it just not the right time? And if it's not the right time, let me plant that seed so that, again, we could collaborate in the future. So the whole saying no with love really helped alleviate my burnout and help me be proactive about it because now I'm like, there's no way I'm doing anything that I don't want to do. And even if, small little things would happen in my life, I paid attention to how I would respond to that because burnout, I think, is also connected to stress over like big things happening in your life, but also the small things. Like before I hopped on this call with you, my desk behind me, I don't know if you can see it in the video, it's got a glass desktop and the entire thing shattered. And it's like still like popping. I can hear the glass cracking. And I think, the older version of myself would have been mad. Like I just spent like $600 on this desk. But because I can kind of slow down and think about it, like, what is this really telling me? And how can I do something positive moving forward? And I thought to myself, you know what? I don't need two desks in here. Why am I buying things so I could do more work? And so I'm going to remove that desk, take it out, and I'm going to create like a cozy rest corner for myself. So I'm going to move in a little chair or a little, couch and a table and have that set up. So again, I'm not going to be stressed out. Now I don't have this desk, blah, blah, blah. Let's just, lean into how I was feeling, but let it go and figure out what I know about myself and use that as data. So, what I know about myself is that I tend to always look for ways to do more work, even if I enjoy it. So, I realized that even good energy is energy used. So, yeah, again, just important little things you can figure out if you slow down long enough to look at them.
I know what it's like to be so deep in the weeds that you can't tell what's urgent versus what actually moves the needle. Everything feels important, everything feels heavy, and the longer you wait, the more stuck you feel. If that's where you're at right now, I want to offer you something very simple: a free 30-minute coaching call. This isn't a sales pitch, it's not a discovery call in disguise. It's just you and me looking at your business together, figuring out what's really going on and what to do next. Even one solid insight can change the way you lead, delegate, or grow. I've done these calls with other accidental CEOs just like you, and the results are real. More clarity, better decisions, and a relief that someone finally gets it. If you want one of those spots, grab it now at accidentalceo.co/free-call. That's accidentalceo.co/free-call. I would love to hear your story and help you get unstuck.
Let's give them a very tangible example of how to say no in a situation where it doesn't align with what you want to do, and how to say no in a situation where it's just not the good time. So let's give them maybe the words to say that so people can have an idea how to do that.
And I think the first step is, again, figuring out why you want to say no to this. That's going to be step one. Figure that out. Okay, this organization or this project does not align with who I am, does not align with my values. Be very clear about that in your no, and also keep it short. Because I remember spending so much time typing out these like 8-paragraph emails, like, oh, I want to make sure they're not mad at me. Again, we have to do that work on the self first. So a lot of these strategies, like say no with love and all of that, it's like a temporary solution, right? You have to do that deep work on the self to understand what you value and why. And then when you take on these kinds of strategies to say no with love, it actually is rooted in something and it's going to land a lot stronger. So I might just say something like, I really appreciate you reaching out to me with this opportunity. unfortunately, it doesn't look like our values align, And one thing that I might do is if, again, community is so important to me, if I have someone on my list or in my spreadsheet or something like that who I think would be an awesome fit for an opportunity like this, I'll always put someone else's name or at least link to their website or whatever, because it's not always like a terrible fit. Like that doesn't often happen. It just might be like, oh, like, I'm not really wanting to work in the corporate realm right now, but so and so over here who's a friend of mine, that would be amazing. So let me go ahead and put other people in touch. So that's where the love component comes in, is just, it's not always just a hard and fast no. It might be a no for you forever, but here's how it can be a yes for someone else. So that's something to think about. And then if it's a not right now, this is my favorite no, because I'll get so creative here. I might say, like, oh, wow, like this is totally up my alley. I am so excited about this. Unfortunately, I've got, too much on the go right now. Or I might say, I've got 3 to 4 other projects that I have to prioritize. But I would love to reconnect in the summer to maybe brainstorm some other ideas for how we can collaborate. And then I might even throw in my like Calendly book me link or something like that. Now, here's the important part. Now I'm going to put that in my tracker. Like, I'm such a nerd. I'm going to track that I've gotten in or that I've responded to this person. And then if I don't hear from them in the summer, I'm going to check in. Just say, like, I planted that seed. Now the checking in is like watering the seed in hopes that something blossoms. And what's really great is even if that project that they reached out to you about maybe isn't something you want to do, like you could do it, but maybe you've got a better idea. Now with that brainstorm call, you can actually talk through some of those ideas and they'll see how like passionate and excited you are, that you never know. You might have a permanent like fractional relationship in the works as well, which can be really cool.
So you've implemented obviously that in your practice. How has that impact just overall your life and your energy and your creative output?
Yeah, this is the biggest thing I think for creatives is sometimes we're doing all of this work on ourselves and we're, using all of these strategies, but we don't really see how does that connect to the creative practice. But for me, I can tell you my energy has totally transformed itself where now I'm not, for example, like working on a book and just trying to get the word count up and like hurry up and finish this project. The writing time that I have, the quality of it has shifted. So it's not like now I have more time in the day because it's like it's the same 24 hours. But because my energy has been, stabilized and managed throughout the day, by the time I get to my creative time, which honestly is just on the weekends when I start to really look at working on my book projects, I feel different in my body. I don't feel like rushing through it. I feel like I enjoy it. And the quality of what's coming out is like night and day. I don't have to like rewrite something 36 times. I might have to rewrite it, 5 or 6. But again, it's just transforming how I'm showing up. And I appreciate that time now and I protect it. And again, then the boundary work comes into play when you've got a friend who's like, blow off your writing or don't do your design work on the weekend. Let's go and hang out. Now I'm like, listen, again, I know how to have that conversation around protecting my time because I've done so much work around it. So I think it takes some time to really see how your creative world can be transformed. But again, it's just that deep work of understanding yourself and then moving accordingly, taking all of that data and asking yourself, what is this telling me about how I want to show up for myself? And you can see like that's individualized work. I can't just say, here's a 10-step process to, building creative balance. We have to look at who you are as a person. And it's basically me like shining a light in all of these kind of dark corners and having the person look at it and say, whoa, didn't know that was there. But now that I know it's there, I can't unsee it and I can do something powerful with it.
Nothing like understanding your own like energy and yourself as a person to kind of make sure that every decision that you make kind of aligns with what you're trying to accomplish and makes life a lot easier for sure. As a coach that works with a lot of different people too, I have backgrounds in photography and in healthcare. I spent many years in healthcare and found myself working with different kinds of people too. So I know you went through a few rebrands and kind of expanded your focus from working only with writers to a more broad audience. How did you navigate that transition? What drove you to change? What kind of like experiences you went through? Do you like, I probably should be expanding this to like more people? Let's talk about that.
It's funny, and I think the expansion actually happened through me just being in the wrong spaces, for too long. And again, I started out kind of consulting. And so I was working with publishers in hopes of providing supports for their authors. But I received so much pushback. Like publishers were like, we don't need extra help. Everything's great. And I'm thinking, I'm an author and I know that things are not great. But they were just so resistant to having somebody come in. And I think, part of that had to do with them assuming that maybe they weren't doing their job, which is not what I was saying. It's just you folks are already overworked. Let's not add more to your plate. Let's create a new role around author support. That was such a new concept that I think folks were like shaking their heads. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll just move on. And so what ended up doing was taking all of those author care supports and resources, and I started to infuse that into the other work I was doing. So working with writers, mentorships and editing, I just infused the author care work in that way. Then the pandemic happened. And all of a sudden, folks realized, oh, these authors actually do need help. And there are multiple ways to do it. Folks suddenly started to listen. And then they were coming to me, and I was like, this is all good and fine. But it still felt very reactive. Like my whole thing is that we need to be proactive about this and really start to set authors up in a positive way instead of just saying, oh, they're struggling, let's call somebody in. And so that kind of transitioned into the coaching because I thought, okay, I want to work directly with these authors because going through the publishing or the publishers just isn't working for me. So I started to work with writers and I saw, okay, wow, transformations are starting to happen because I'm able to look at all of these intricate pieces of them. And together we're, turning over the leaves and looking at what's underneath it and taking that valuable data. So that's kind of what led me to rebranding and focusing on coaching instead of consulting. And then I was working with a marketing specialist, another creative, and she passively, just like at the back of her mind, just said, oh, yeah, this is something that a lot of other creatives could benefit from. Anyway, and then she moved on. I was like, hold on, you just said something like super cool. And so I never forgot that she thought, okay, this is something that folks outside of the writing and publishing realm could benefit from. And that was the start of the rebrand right there, where I'm like, yeah, I could envision working with, dancers and athletes and all kinds of people. And it's funny because a colleague of mine who I worked with when I was in publishing said to me, like, yeah, you should be working with dancers because, their careers kind of have an expiry really early. Like at 27, she had retired from being a professional dancer. And it's like you have to figure out what you want to do and who you are. And it's like you said, separating that identity, who you are as a human being from that job. And that's really difficult work for a lot of people. So that brings me to where I am now, which is coaching and doing this deep, deep self discovery work.
Yeah, that's another thing I can definitely identify with. So I was a professional athlete in Brazil before I came to the US and played volleyball for 16 years of my life. And I was very observant even when I was younger. And I started noticing these colleagues, these friends of mine who really struggle with no understanding who they were outside of the sport. Like if they were not playing because they're injured, they were so depressed and so, out of place that they just didn't know how to exist without that. And very early in my life, I decided that volleyball was just something I was good at and I used to get to other things that I wanted to do. It was not me. It was not going to be me. It was my way to get a college scholarship. It was my way to get to certain things, but it was never me. So I was able to separate myself from the sport, which it's very hard to do when that's all you do. And then went into a career then in healthcare that kind of I had to do the same thing because I was so ingrained into being a physical therapist and taking care of patients that it was hard for me to figure out what would I be, what would I do if I didn't do that. And that's going through that mental exercise is what kind of put photography into my life. Like when I started thinking like if I couldn't be a physical therapist anymore, what would I do? And that's when all these other things kind of pop up that, I wasn't even thinking about or wouldn't consider. In my mind, that's what I would die doing. Like that, I had no intention of doing anything different. And I remember doing, personality tests and those kinds of tests and sitting down with somebody to go over things. And she was saying, it shows up that you're very creative and you really enjoy working outdoors. And I'm like, yeah, those tests are terrible. Like, that's not, I'm a science-based person. I'm inside all day. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is so wrong. And then here I am doing all these
So
things.
it's so interesting. And like you said, it's really hard to do. And especially if you grow up with a very specific narrative. Like, for example, I work with a lot of people who their families tell them that if you go into the arts, like, don't even think about it. You need to be in this professional science or whatever happens to be. So again, that work on the self and separating yourself from these old messages that just no longer serve you, that is a really intense work. You can't just say, okay, I'm just going to do what I want. No, you may even have to cut ties with people or change relationships with people and have those relationships evolve. Like, it's really intense for sure.
That subconscious message is really intense.
I know, it sure is.
What kind of training did you do to kind of get yourself a more rounded approach to coaching? Like, did you do anything official when it comes to what you offer to your clients?
Yeah, and this is where I think things can get really powerful for folks who want to move into like a different career. Like for me, I paid close attention to again all these things that I wanted to work on. So taking communication courses, I got a certification in mindfulness facilitation, and I'm in the middle of a coaching certification program. It's like a laser focused approach, which is just wow, boggling my mind. But as I'm moving through that certification program, I'm also seeing a lot of similarities to the mindfulness realm. And I'm like, ooh, this is interesting how these things connect. So I think, having a certification and having some experience and all of that behind you is really important. But the more intentional you are about how you evolve from that is like everything. So I'm very curious to see where this certification program that I'm in now is going to take me. Because what I love is how all of my editorial experience and all of my decade plus experience in publishing has carried over. Like, these transferable skills are just powerful. And, my work as an editor, I would always ask really powerful and profound questions of the writer. What was it that made you do this particular thing with that character? To get them to think. And I'm like, that's the same thing I'm going to be doing in coaching. So those skill sets don't just disappear, they strengthen and they come together and you're able to kind of flex these super cool muscles. So I'm excited. I'm doing lots of different certifications for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy behind Breathing Space Creative and how it serves as like a haven for other creatives? Let's talk about that a little bit.
This is something that's changed so much over the last few years. But right now, I see it as this place where we can like resist this pressure to hurry up. And I think that is the world that we live in today with like instant gratification. We order something on Amazon tomorrow, it's at our door. And so we're really pushing back against that at Breathing Space Creative. So it's an opportunity to stop time, which sounds weird, but that's really what it is. We can stop, we can slow down, and we can look at everything here. And I think that's essential for creatives, especially if you feel this constant pressure to produce and produce and produce. This is an opportunity to press pause, to look at who you are, separate yourself from whatever it is that you do for just a minute, just so you can look at everything, and then come together and piece those things back together in a way that works for you. So that's essentially the philosophy that I've now finally even understood myself. Because one thing that I think has kept me stuck is not understanding fully what it is that I wanted to do at Breathing Space Creative and who I wanted to work with. And I finally, after 6 years, figured it out. So it took me a long time.
It's hard having some clarity around. but it does make a huge difference once you really figure it out. But it's stuff that you cannot do if you don't take the time and give yourself the space to do it. If you're just on the go, you go all the time, you can't really analyze and look at, the data and look at what you've done and really have the feelings of where you want to be going and all that. So it's important to step on the brakes.
Oh, yes. And give yourself permission to do it as
Mhm.
well.
What are some of the key tools and strategies that you've kind of developed in the Breathing Space Creative that you share with the individuals that are part of that community?
I would say the Thrive coaching program is pretty much an opportunity to do two things. One of those things is to look at all of these potential strategies that we can use. But the strategies, again, are just temporary until we do the deep self work. And so the deep self work happens inside of the one on one coaching calls where we're really uncovering some things. And then we're going to take all of those strategies like saying no with love, building out like your time protection plan around your project. All of these really intricate kind of processes and strategies will happen once we've figured out, okay, well, what is at the root of this? What's causing you, for example, to feel like you need to work 12, 13, 14 hours a day? What's causing you to not let go of certain beliefs and narratives? So we do all of that work one on one. And then we come into this wider room where now we've got this beautiful toolkit to kind of dive into. And this was hard because I had a lot of different strategies and offerings outside of the Thrive coaching program, but I had to let all of them go. And so now at Breathing Space, we have one thing that we do, and that's the Thrive coaching program. It's built on the Say No with Love framework. And so I have a workshop, the Say No with Love workshop, that kind of introduces people to this concept in kind of like a blink of an eye format. So that's pretty much what we do. It's the Say No with Love culture over at Breathing Space Creative, which is fun because it ruffles some feathers. And some people are like, oh, like, I don't know how to say, I can't say no because I feel guilty. And I'm like, I know. That's why we're going to work on that in the coaching. Well,
For someone who is currently kind of feeling overwhelmed and possibly in the brink of burnout, what advice would you give to, for them to get through it and just based on your experience and the services that you provide?
I would say find someone who can help you see what you can't see. That is going to be the biggest and boldest step because I know when I was inside of it, I was lucky in that I was able to pinpoint what it was, but not everyone is that lucky. And chances are there's things happening that you won't see. So figure out who can help you, figure out who can get in the helicopter, essentially, and just kind of fly above you and take a look and see what you find out from there. But that's the first step is just calling in someone who can see what you can't see.
That's where coaches come from, right? Definitely recommend that. It's something that I love working with my clients too, is really taking that time to understand. A lot of times what the problem that people come to you with is really not the problem that they have going on. But if you don't take the time to really assess that and analyze it and dig in, dig deep, it's just you're going to try to implement a solution that is really not going to bring the result that you're looking for. So well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I think we had a really great conversation about some very valuable strategies to kind of fight the burnout and really taking the time to get some clarity, people's missions and visions and what they want to accomplish with their work. So I appreciate you being with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I feel nourished. I feel good.
Oh, I love that. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to work with you and learn more about your services.
You can find me in 3 places. You can find me at breathingspacecreative.com. You can find me at cheleneknight.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, which is at Breathing Space Creative Studio.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. This was a great episode, and please share the world. Tell everybody how great the podcast was. Tag a friend, send it to them, spread the love. Let's help each other fight this burnout and learn how to say no with love. We'll see you next week. Bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nada Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.